Hey guys, welcome back to the studio for another lesson. I've got a bit of a quick one for you this week. Today we're going to be dipping back into some sequence and pattern playing to see how we can use simple ideas to kickstart longer bebop lines. And we'll start out by learning a pattern that you've definitely heard some of your favorite soloists use before. It's a super simple idea, but it's got a ton of mileage for building longer, more fleshed out bebop lines. And once you guys are comfortable with playing the pattern across the guitar, I'll show you how we can apply it to 2/5 and build off of it to play those longer bebop lines. You guys ready? Let's get started. Last time we talked about this sort of thing, I showed you guys a pattern that was made up of an incredibly simple idea. All we did was go up a triad and then down one step, repeating that structure through the whole scale in both directions. Now, we also talked about why this is such a valuable thing to practice, since, as I mention all the time, the notes in your lines don't need to only consist of notes in the lead sheet chord. What's more important is landing correctly in the right places. Now, to help you guys play around with this idea some more, I first want to show you a sequence that you've definitely heard from great players like Sonny Stitt or Wes Montgomery. Here's how it works. We're going to approach the fifth of each triad in the scale from a half step below and then play down that triad. Then we'll move this pattern down through the scale and then up. Now, let's take a look at how that works when we do it inside of one octave. Like I said, it's a really simple idea, but it's super effective. That chromatic approach also gives us just a little bit of extra tension, which is always welcome in my book. And just like everything we practice, we should take this further and play it across the whole register of the guitar. Here's that exercise for you to check out now. Something else we should explore when playing through patterns like this is to change the scale quality and see how that affects the potential harmonies that we can apply it to. My first instinct when doing this in my own practice is to shift whatever pattern I'm working on into melodic minor. It might seem like that's a pretty simple procedure, and it sort of is, but even just flattening the third can potentially throw a wrench into the fingering that we've worked out for the major scale. Take a listen to how it sounds if we play the same pattern in one octave, but in melodic minor this time. Just like before, we shouldn't stop at one octave and call it a day. I can't stress enough that whatever it is you're working on, you should do it across the whole register. When we're in the moment and improvising with this kind of thing, we don't want to have to think too much about the execution. To be able to rely on our ears and our intuition instead, it's super important to get these types of things as deeply into muscle memory as possible. Here's that same pattern in melodic minor this time, across the entire register for you to check out now. In addition to this pattern, the PDF resource for today's lesson contains a bunch of other patterns and sequencing ideas written out for you to try implementing in your own solos. That being said, it's all well and good to be able to rip through these patterns. They do sound pretty slick after all, and I think they're super fun to play. But just playing patterns doesn't really get us all the way to playing bebop lines. Now, just like in the last video I did on this type of approach, we should use this type of pattern playing to kickstart our lines or weave it into a longer idea. Up next, I'm going to show you guys how to do just that. But before I do, I need to give a quick shout out to TRUEFIRE.com for supporting the channel. TRUEFIRE is an online lesson library that's host to literally thousands of courses on a wide range of musical topics from some really amazing artists and educators, including yours truly. If you're interested in improving your comping, make sure to check out my course, Exploring Melodic Jazz Comping, available on TRUEFIRE now. In this course, I'll demonstrate and break down 17 essential comping approaches using TRUEFIRE's interactive learning tools. We'll work on a colorful variety of melodic and harmonic approaches using drop two voicings, chord substitutions, approach chords, diminished concepts, and voice leading. We'll also dive into triadic approaches, partial chords, using scales as chords, and the art of borrowing notes and dominants. You'll learn how these melodic comping approaches can be artistically applied using backing tracks based on the changes to popular jazz standards, like Autumn Leaves, There Will Never Be Another You, and All the Things You Are. The link to the course is in the description of this video. I also want to take a second to mention that I'm going to be doing a live stream through TRUEFIRE's social channels where I'll be answering viewer questions about the fundamentals of bebop improvisation. We're going to be talking about stuff like arpeggios, sequences, and pattern playing, just like this, as well as chromaticism and essential phrases, and other things that I'm sure will come up. As a special treat, this week you can use the code YFN8G to get 15% off your TRUEFIRE purchase when you use the link in the description. If you've ever had any burning questions about some of the content in these lessons and want to be able to ask me directly, make sure you keep an eye on TRUEFIRE's social media for more details. Now let's get back to the lesson and see how we can use this pattern to play some lines over 2/5. Just like with everything we do here at the studio, it's really important that we apply this concept to playing lines over changes once we're comfortable and have it in our fingers. Now, the goal here, in my opinion, is to learn to hear the potential places that you can pop out of a pattern like this and then finish a line in a more natural way using other elements of bebop language. To help you guys out with this, I've prepared a few phrases over 2/5 in C major that make liberal use of the sequence we've been practicing today. Keep in mind that this is just another melodic device that we have in our toolkit, so be careful not to overuse it. These sorts of things are great for kickstarting ideas or to help you get out of a jam in a moment when inspiration fails to strike. The goal should always be to hear what you're playing, though, and not solely rely on muscle memory or ideas that you've worked out ahead of time. Take a listen to this first phrase using today's pattern, and then we'll break it down together. See what I mean about using the sequence as a way to kickstart a phrase? Now let's zoom in a bit and I'll explain exactly how this line works. This phrase starts out by approaching the second of a G7, and then it runs down the sequence until we approach the flat 7. There we interrupt the pattern slightly so I can land with this B, the third of our G7 scale, on beat 3. I use that moment to play this classic Charlie Parker enclosure around the 5th of C major, and then I finish the phrase by playing this diatonic cell, and then Barry Harris's 3 phrase. Let's take a look at one more line from the PDF for today's lesson before we wrap up for today. This next line starts out with the sequence, but from a different degree of the scale, and then uses pieces of it in between other bits of bebop language to break up the phrasing a bit. Check out how that sounds now, and then we'll break things down together. Even though some of the resolutions in this line end up being delayed by an eighth note, I think it works really well and adds a bit more tension. Let's take a closer look at it and I'll explain how it works. This line starts out by approaching the 5th of G7 and then running the sequence up. And once we come down that second triad, though, we use it to resolve up into the 3rd of G with a chromatic approach. From there, we'll go straight up the chord from the 3rd, and then play a chromatic enclosure around the root, followed by another chromatic enclosure around the 3rd of C. That enclosure then turns into playing a cell from the sequence, which we interrupt with this melodic cell. and then play one more cell from the sequence before resolving and finishing the phrase. Thanks so much for sticking around all the way to the end of today's video. Now let me know down in the comments what you guys thought of the lesson. I really hope you enjoy this pattern. I think it's really fun to work through ideas like this and then see how we can apply them to different harmonies. As always, if you did find today's lesson helpful, make sure you give the video a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell for notifications too. If you want to access the PDF for today's lesson, you can grab that, along with the whole back catalog for all the videos on the channel, for just $10 a month over at my Patreon page, or by just hitting the join button right here on YouTube. A big thanks to all of my patrons and YouTube members, which you should be seeing scrolling past. The community is getting a little larger, and I'm always hard at work trying to develop new resources and content for you guys. If you're interested in becoming a member, I am running a promo this week to coincide with the TRUEFIRE Live. You can get yourself a year of Patreon membership for 15% off with the code LIVE15, or click the link in the description. Special thanks to new members Michael Hartens, Coltank, Damian Fulara, Martin Rhodes, Nathan Sarver, Andrew Borman, Craig Daniels, Jonas Debbans, the Cat Lychee. Welcome to the studio, guys. An extra special thanks to Jazz Luminaire patrons Bill Jacob and Stephen White. Thank you guys all so much for your continued support. I'm David Shore, and thanks again for hanging with me at the studio today. I'll see you guys next time.